Welcome to Live Vita, the show for women who are ready to break free from diet culture, nourish their bodies intuitively, and reconnect with their natural rhythms. I'm Shay, a registered holistic nutritionist and founder of the Vita Method, where I help women support their gut, hormones, and metabolism through practical, evidence-informed nutrition and lifestyle changes, all without the overwhelm. Here we'll talk about real nourishment, metabolism, slow living, and everything in between. I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in. Hello. Welcome back to the podcast. I have made some changes. So I think the last time I was on here, I said, hey, I took a break. We're doing season 2. And hey, we're doing season 2, but I'm going to go to a monthly podcast. And the reason for this is because I can't keep up. And that is just the reality, of things. For those of you who don't know, I, at the time of this recording, have a full-time job. It is a high-demand management job in a busy hospitality-oriented place. So I work in a restaurant, a fancy restaurant attached to a hotel. So I am pretty busy a lot of the time in my Monday to Friday, and sometimes I'm working extra and all of those great things that come with being in upper management. And that's great because, having a good and steady income is obviously good for my well-being. But it also means that sometimes my time is really limited and I'm not able to get to produce the things I actually want to produce for you who is listening to this podcast. And you know what? That's okay. It just means that I have to evaluate my time and my energy and maybe go to a different model. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to go, let's say once a month, I put out a podcast episode. I think that is a consistency I should be able to keep up with, along with creating reels for Instagram and free content for Instagram and all of this other stuff that people who, are creating things, wellness creators or content creators, it's a lot of work to make stuff. And that's just the reality of it. But I truly enjoy it. And I got this really wonderful comment from someone recently who, I don't know this person personally, but they just sent me the most heartfelt message about how some of the information they heard on my podcast really helped them and opened a new door for them, and it really was the guiding light for them at this hard time in their life. And getting messages like that really just makes it so worth it and makes me be okay, I am showing up for you. I'm showing up for this, for the one person who gets a change and it opens a door for them. If I can do that for one person, that's amazing. If I can do that for more than one person, even better. So here we are. We're back. It is November 2025. Oh my God, it's almost 2026. And I wanted to come on here and talk a little bit about the holidays and stress and metabolism and how we could approach holiday eating and holiday celebrations and holiday feasting without going crazy. So let's jump into it. I'm going to try and keep this a short episode today. I'm totally unscripted. I didn't even write notes. I literally just sat down and hit record because this is something that I want to talk about, and I think I can talk about it without even having any talking notes. So let's go. If you are into the holidays and you're like, oh my God, everything is happening at once, I'm feeling stressed. What about the feasting? What about my trying to eat clean, trying to eat healthy, whatever that looks like? What about all this? How am I going to approach this? How am I going to do family dinner? Let's get into it. So the one thing that I want to bring up, and I think I talked about this in my last episode that I posted, so make sure you go listen to that, is that winter is truly a time of slowing down. Our energy slows down, our metabolism slows down. We are more governed by melatonin at this time of year, or we should be. However, we live in a society that is very brightly illuminated. And so this actually creates a little bit of circadian dysregulation within our bodies. It is nighttime basically at 5 p.m. right now. And I feel like it's the middle of the night at 5 p.m. And my body feels like it's the middle of the night at 5 p.m. But we have lots of lights and things keeping us active. And to some extent, this is necessary because, hey, we live in the modern world. We have jobs, we have obligations, we have responsibilities, we have things that we need to do. And that's fine. But we should have this idea of hey, my body actually does want to slow down at this time of year. And, I'm feeling tired, I'm feeling sluggish. And instead of trying to push through that, let's lean into that. So the first thing that I want you to think about is, how can I actually create more darkness for myself, more coziness, more hibernation? How can I give my body that extra rest that it needs? And I know this can be a really big ask, especially if you have family or obligations or children or, anything like that. It can be a hard ask because maybe your time is already so routinely managed that you're like, well, I can't really go to bed earlier, but maybe you can. And maybe that's only, 30 minutes earlier than normal, or maybe you just start winding down a little bit earlier than normal, being like, hey, you know what, instead of this normal morning or evening routine, I'm going to slow it down a little bit. I'm going to light some candles, or I'm going to, turn on the dim lighting, or I'm going to get some blue blockers for watching TV. I actually do this. I have pink lens glasses that I use. They're like light sensitivity glasses. And I use those when I'm feeling extra sensitive and extra like, hey, I really need to wind down, but I'm not quite ready for bed yet. I'll wear those when we're watching TV, or like my partner is playing video games, or I'm on my phone, or, any of those kind of like potato moments at home where you're just a couch potato and you don't quite feel like going to bed, but you want to look at your device and it's not the greatest. I use light sensitivity glasses for this, and I feel like it makes a huge difference for me. And then I also go to bed and I use my red lens blue blockers when I'm reading in bed. So the first thing we want to think of is like, how can I actually slow myself down at this time of year to give my body the extra rest that it needs? And this might not be perfect every day. I have not had perfect weeks recently, but you know what? I know the tools are there and I'm going to use them whenever I can. And then with that, it's also very important that we're getting that morning light. We talk about this all the time, and I think everybody knows now about their circadian rhythm because it's been so popularized, but it's still so important to go outside and get daylight during the day in winter. So this could look like waking up a bit earlier, getting outside a little bit earlier, and getting more of that light exposure. Again, of course, this is going to depend on what your lifestyle and your schedule looks like, but ultimately try to get up a little bit earlier, get outside a little bit earlier, and take time outside throughout your day to kind of adjust your body to what's going on, because there's nothing worse than getting to work in the dark and leaving work in the dark and having not gone outside at all for the entire day. So try to take your coffee break outside, try to take your lunch break outside. Just be like, oh, I have to go to the washroom, and go walk outside for like 5 minutes on your way to the washroom. Like whatever you need to do to make that work for you, just do it, because you're going to feel so much better. And psychologically, this also breaks up your day. So whatever you have going on in the day, if you're working in a building, whatever you got going on, you're actually breaking up the stress of the environment that you're in by going outside and taking like 5 minutes to just get some natural light in your eyes, to like feel the cold on your skin. It's going to invigorate you and help support your nervous system. So aside from those habits that we want to be cultivating, one thing that starts happening a lot at this time of year is people start craving carbohydrates. And this in part happens because you are not getting enough light in your eyes, and carbohydrates help produce serotonin for your brain. And light does the same thing. So if we can go get that light in our eyes, we're going to actually end up reducing our carbohydrate cravings in the winter, which is great because you tend to slow down in the winter anyway. You're not moving as much. And so those extra carbohydrates, the energy that they're giving your body isn't necessarily being used. So if we are having carb cravings, the first thing you want to think about is like, hey, am I actually like spending time outside and getting light in my eyes? Or is my brain and my body just feeling so low energy, run down, that I'm actually just craving carbs now, because that's what your body needs for quick energy. But that quick energy isn't actually going to fuel you if you are not using it appropriately, right? It's going to create anxiety, or it's going to create blood sugar swings or blood sugar crashes. So this is very common, especially this time of year when we're all running around like crazy people trying to like get ready for the holidays, whatever that means. And then you forgot to eat, or you didn't have breakfast or whatever, and then suddenly you're like craving a muffin or a croissant or like that piece of brownie that your kid didn't eat, whatever it looks like. Those carb cravings are coming because your nervous system is actually running on low, and your body needs that sugar to get itself going. But again, we need that sugar to go towards something, not just be extra energy in your body that has nowhere to go and creates anxiety and ultimately, maybe some bloating and stuff like this. And one thing to note with these carb cravings and in winter is that in the wintertime, when it gets colder and darker, our bodies actually change to become more insulin resistant. And that is why it becomes even more important that if you are like having these carbs, or if you are like having quote unquote naked carbs, so when you just eat like a croissant with no protein, or you just have a cookie with no protein or whatever, it's very important that you realize that your blood sugar is already at this place where it's a little bit resistant to insulin. So having those carbs is going to create more insulin resistance if you do not have an output for the energy. So this is how I like to look at carbohydrates, right? Carbohydrates are necessary and they create energy for our bodies. They help fuel, the thyroid. They help fuel your brain by having regular glucose available. There's lots of benefits to having carbohydrates, and I don't think we need to be afraid of them. I don't think we even need to be afraid of sugar per se. This is like super controversial. But obviously with the context of like ultra processed foods equal bad. And that doesn't mean you can't have these like quote unquote fun foods, but I would just generally discourage them because they're probably not helping your physiology or your biology. And if you need them, then that's more of like a mindset issue or a relational issue with food. But that's a different conversation. That's more of like an emotional relationship with food conversation, and that's not what we're talking about here today. But in general, your body needs carbohydrates. It needs the sugars that it acquires from fruit and carbs and maple syrup and whatever, and indulging in a little treat here and there is not a problem. Even if you have like dessert every day is not inherently a problem. But when we have carbohydrates, it creates energy in the body, right? You have calories, which is a measurement of energy. And if you have more calories, more energy than what your body is using as an output, then that's when we get into trouble with, gaining weight and different things like that. And while I'm not super weight focused, I do think we need to consider our body composition. So when we have carbohydrates, we need to be sure that the carbs that we're eating actually have like a purpose and a function. Like, are you very active? Are you very busy throughout the day? Or are you very sedentary? Because the more sedentary you are, the less carbohydrates you're going to need. And in winter in general, when it's dark, especially if you live somewhere snowy, that gets very cold, think about what's growing in your climate. You're probably going to do better on a lower carbohydrate diet during the winter months. And again, this is because you're going to be more insulin resistant, so having lower carbohydrates is going to be beneficial. But that being said, if you have very high output of energy all through winter and you're doing a lot of things, you can still eat carbohydrates. It doesn't mean you need to cut back on your carbs. And this kind of gets into the idea around feasting as well. One of the things that I've seen wellness coaches and gut health coaches and whatnot say around Thanksgiving or around Christmas or other feasting holidays is make sure that you still do X, Y, and Z. Make sure that you only have, a bite of dessert or one glass of wine. Make sure you limit and restrict yourself is basically the message that's coming across. And I have some issues with this. One of the issues is that why do we always need to be so controlling and so obsessive over the purity of our food, the purity of our health, etc.? It's like that level of control and obsession over purity for your wellness creates more anxiety and more nervous system distrust, and it creates this bad relationship with food and your body. So keep in mind, feasting holidays are about feasting. It's not about moderation anymore. And we should probably moderate ourselves to a certain extent. You probably should not eat the entire cheesecake. You probably should not drink an entire bottle or two of wine. That's probably good moderation. But if you want a second helping of dessert, God forbid, of course, you should have that. And especially you should have that if you're trying to repair your relationship with food in your body. Because here is an example that I personally experienced at the last feasting holiday that I was at. I think it was Thanksgiving. I'm not sure. Whole family was there and somebody served me dessert, and the portion of dessert that I received was small. And it was smaller than other people's portions. And I had my own mental gymnastics around why did they give me a small portion? And no. But ultimately I was this is one of my favorite desserts. It was cheesecake. I love cheesecake. And I wanted a bigger portion. That is what I wanted. I wanted more. And so I was like, you know what? I could just eat this small portion. And I did. But internally, my nervous system was like ramped up. And I call this like my angry food gremlin. It's basically like this internal feeling that comes up, and I can only describe it as an angry food gremlin who's like, I want more. I am not happy. I'm not satisfied. And it ramps up my nervous system. So I feel agitated and like frustrated and angry and all of these things. But you know what I did? I had a second helping. And my second helping of dessert was more than I needed. I finished it to the brink of like, I'm a little past fullness, I'm a little past satisfaction, and I actually like didn't need that entire second portion. But what happened when I had that second portion is that the angry food gremlin inside of me, that nervous system activation that was going into fight or flight over this relationship with food, was calm and went away, and I was satisfied and I was happy and I felt no restriction and I felt no more anxiety. It just went away. And it was a great lesson too. And this is kind of what I teach, is like, do the thing and then evaluate. Like, how did that make me feel? What did I actually need? So when I had that second portion of dessert, it satisfied that like angry little gremlin inside of me. And it also satisfied my appetite. But I also realized like, hey, I didn't need that full second helping. And if my first helping had just been the size that I had wanted, I probably would have been satisfied and wouldn't have gone back for seconds. But it's all to say that there's these complex dynamics that happen around food and our relationship with food in relationship to feasting, right? So Christmas, Thanksgiving, birthdays, big events where the family gathers and there's a lot of food, it can make a lot of complexity within your own self and your own relationship to food. Do you eat light earlier in the day to save your appetite for later? Or do you restrict yourself at the table and make sure you only have a little bit, a little taste? What does that look like for you? And I think it's important to acknowledge when you maybe have like an angry food gremlin inside of you and see like, what is this message saying to me right now? And if I just, give the thing inside of me what it's asking for, do I feel better? How does that land for me? And some people would say that it is a relic of diet culture to like eat light before going out to feast, but I don't think so. I think it has to do with your relationship to that and your relationship to hunger. Like if you're starving yourself all day in order to go out and binge eat at night, yeah, that is a disordered relationship there, and you probably will want to evaluate that. But if you're like, hey, I'm going to this really big gathering and my family spent all this time cooking this food and there's going to be all this delicious stuff and some of my favorite things are going to be there and I want to indulge. I'm going to eat light today because I want to be hungry later and I want to have like room, quote unquote, to eat food later. Maybe that works for you. That doesn't work for everybody. But, it doesn't have to be disordered to, quote unquote, save room for a feast later. And I also want to stress the point that, like, you can feast. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not going to ruin your metabolism. It's not going to ruin your diet. You're not going to gain 10 pounds overnight from having a large, like, feasting type of meal. It just doesn't work that way. Like, yeah, you might hang on to some water. You might gain some water weight, but you didn't gain, like, pounds of fat from one meal. That's not how your physiology works. And I do think it's still very important to make sure we're nourishing ourselves appropriately, even if we're planning on feasting later. So you still want to have your high protein breakfast. You still want to make sure you're having regular meals and you're not going like 6, 7, 8 hours without eating, because then you're going to be overly hungry, right? You still need to nourish yourself. You still need to feed yourself, even if you are going out and having a big meal later. And just go into the big meal knowing like, hey, I'm giving myself permission to have whatever I want and as much of it as I want. And we still want to practice our intuitive eating skills within this framework, right? It's like, I'm still going to put protein on my plate. I'm still going to put like a generous serving of vegetables because I want that fiber. I want those phytonutrients. But I'm also going to maybe have a few extra scoops of scalloped potatoes because they're delicious and I like them. And, I'm going to probably have an extra glass or two of wine because we have some really nice wine at the table and I'm enjoying my company and I'm enjoying the cohesion and the conversation that comes from
loosening your inhibitions from having a couple glasses of wine. But I'm not going to go overboard, right? I'm going to make sure that, hey, I'm checking in with myself. How am I feeling? Have I had water? Oh, make sure that I'm also drinking many glasses of water along with my wine. Make sure that I'm also, like I said, getting my protein and my fiber along with my potatoes and my cheesecake and whatever. Giving yourself permission to enjoy life and enjoy food is kind of the whole point of a feasting holiday. Like, why do we do it if we're not going to enjoy it? Why do we do it if we're just going to be worried about, did grandma use like canola oil in this? And ideally, yeah, like hopefully grandma didn't. And maybe we, want to talk to grandma about her choices. But I think a lot of grandmas are going to be using butter. The holidays, especially when it's like a family gathering, this is not the time to scrutinize every single ingredient in every single dish. Unless you know very specifically that you are currently in a place that you have food sensitivities that are going to cause you like harm and make you feel sick and ill, bring a little bit of something you can offer for everybody at the table if that's the case, because I've been there too where I'm like, I can't eat certain things, and now I'm at this stage of life where I can basically eat anything and it's fine and I don't have any sort of reaction to it. But that wasn't always the case. So I do think there is some nuance there for if you are at a place where you're like, my body just reacts to everything and it's stressful, then like, yeah, maybe you want to bring a couple things that you can bring to the table and offer for other people as well. But also, if you're not that reactive and you're mostly just stressed about food and quality and purity, then maybe this is a great time to practice loosening your grip and actually allowing yourself to have different things. Because, I did this and it was like, you know what? It's not going to kill me. I'm not going to I'm not going to be destroyed by this one meal. And then I'm going to go back to my normal patterns and my normal eating. And when we actually follow our hunger, like I said, when I actually feed that angry food gremlin, when we actually follow our hunger and our desire and our pleasure, we tend to be in balance. So, after feasting holiday the next day, you're probably going to feel like, I don't really want anything that rich. I ate a lot of rich food yesterday and I'm still feeling very satisfied by that. The opposite, where like a diet culture mindset might say, I ate a lot of rich food yesterday and now I feel guilty and I need to burn off those calories. So there's two different ways of looking at this. Ultimately, we want to be looking at it through the lens of like, I really enjoyed myself yesterday and I ate a lot of really delicious food that I really like, and I quite simply am just not that hungry today. And so the next day you might end up eating lighter naturally, following your natural hunger, because your body just doesn't want that much, rich food in a 24-hour period. When you are coming out of very restrictive eating patterns, you might crave lots of rich food, especially if you've been eating only like vegetables and salad and like lean meat for many years, and it's the first time you're giving yourself permission to have rich food. That can look like a different story where it's like you do want that rich food every single day, or like as soon as you give yourself permission to have cheesecake or brownies or like mashed potatoes with cheese and sour cream and whatever, it's like suddenly you're like, oh my God, this is so good, and you just want to eat it all the time. That is one of the kind of rebound healing phases of coming out of very restrictive eating. But I don't want you to be afraid if that's the way you're feeling, because ultimately on the other side is a place where your body can actually self-regulate. It has the ability to self-regulate. We have very specific hormones in order to self-regulate our eating. So, you can indulge one day and then go and eat like light and clean and healthy. I'm putting that in air quotes the next day, but not from a place of worrying about diet, from a place of like, that is truly what your body is craving. For example, I get like really strong cravings for bok choy and broth. Like, I just want some clear broth with some bok choy. And that is like one of my favorite things ever. And it's because it feels so nourishing. But I also like will almost always eat a nice homemade cookie. If you're like, here's a cookie, my face will light up and I'll be like, I'm so excited. Thank you so much. I'm gonna eat that cookie and I'm gonna enjoy it. So it's like we have to come to this place with our relationship to food and our bodies where we can actually enjoy pleasure, because why are we going through life forcing ourselves to do things that we hate. Even with the gym, like I recently went back to the gym, and I'm not going to go there and do things that feel punishing. I'm not going to go there and do things that I do not enjoy. Like, I truly enjoy the movements that I'm doing, and I enjoy the challenge, and I enjoy, the difficulty of what I'm putting myself through, but that is like an enjoyment level of strain. It's not doing something that I hate. If you put me in like a high rocks class, I would hate it and I'd probably leave and I'd be like, I don't want to do this. Like, I have no interest in this. This sucks. And it's kind of the same way with food and our relationship with food. Like, you don't have to eat in a way that you hate or that you find boring or that has no joy in it. You ultimately want to get to a place where like the foods that you're eating are foods that you truly love and enjoy, and they also include protein, fiber, fruit, root vegetables, like healthy quote unquote ancestral foods, making the bulk of your diet with lots of room for the other things that just bring you joy. So I'm going to kind of wrap it up here, but if you're going into the holiday season this year and you're feeling, how am I going to deal with this? There are a couple things I want you to remember. One, your circadian rhythm is going to govern everything as it always does. So let's make sure that we are honoring this time of year by trying to incorporate more rest and relaxation than you would in, say, the summer. However that looks for you. Maybe you start winding down a little bit earlier in the night. Maybe you spend more time in low impact activity. Maybe you get up a little bit earlier, but definitely make sure you're getting outside as much as you can. Then cultivate the awareness that at this time of year, as things get darker and colder and the season shifts, so too does your physiology and you become more insulin resistant. So this is a high stress time of year for a lot of people, high financial stress, high like pressure to do the holidays and enjoy things, and like, oh my God, why do we have to pressure ourselves to enjoy life? That's crazy, but here we are and here we're going. And so remind yourself that like, hey, I might be having more cravings for food at this time of year because my stress is high. And you're going to get those cravings if you're not nourishing yourself appropriately. So let's focus. Make sure you're getting that nice grounding breakfast with your proteins, your fats, your fiber. Maybe if you're really sedentary right now, having a little bit less carbohydrate, or maybe if you're go, having more carbs to fuel your body. If you are like constantly going and moving, you still need carbohydrates, and you probably need more of them than you think. So focusing on your seasonal fruits like your apples and your pears and your pomegranates, your fresh oranges and orange juice for carbohydrates, as well as enjoying the other favorite things that you like. So for me, like cookies, for example, I'm going to eat a good homemade cookie, and there's a lot of cookies around this time of year. So, that's what that is. And when it comes to the feasting holidays, like make sure you give yourself permission to actually enjoy things. If you love Brussels sprouts, like go have extra portions of Brussels sprouts with, grana padano shaved on top of them and like a little roasted garlic or whatever. If you have your favorite dessert at the family table, like do not be shy about having a second portion. If people have comments, they can keep it to themselves. And if they don't keep it to themselves, well, they're kind of rude, So there's that. You can do your own thing and you don't need to absorb other people's opinions. I'm going to just say that because I know there's a lot of opinions out there. But also make sure you're supporting your metabolism and your physiology before you get to the feast. So at any point in time in the year, at any point in time in the day-to-day life that we are living, we want to make sure that we are properly nourished. You do not want to get to the point of hunger where you would just like eat anything that's in front of you. You feel like you're going to pass out. You kind of feel like you're going to throw up. And then as soon as you start eating, you feel sick because you waited too long to eat. And now your body just feels sick and gross and food is terrible. You waited too long. Whatever is going on, you waited too long to eat. So make sure that you are eating regular meals that are helping support your blood sugar, that have protein, fiber, a little bit of carbohydrates, a little bit of fat. Make sure you're eating every 4 hours or so Between 3 and 5 hours is usually the sweet spot for most people. Another big tip for wintertime is front load your food into the earlier part of the day. So have a big breakfast and a big lunch and have a light dinner, except for those feasting holidays where you're going to go out and you're going to go, I'm going to be up late tonight enjoying a nice dinner with my friends and my family or whoever. And that's okay. I'm giving myself permission for that. I recently was eating food at like 9 p.m. because I was out having a very nice dinner with people, with company, and like that's okay. What am I doing the rest of the week? I'm having dinner at like 5 p.m. and I'm having a very small dinner because I'm eating the majority of my food between breakfast and lunch. And then if I need a bedtime snack, I'm reaching for something that's going to help me sleep, like a nice warm glass of milk with honey. So there are various tools that we can use. I hope that this gave you a little bit of information to go with and a little bit of confidence to go into the holidays knowing like, hey, it's okay to give myself permission to eat food and enjoy it. And I'm going to make sure that I am taking care of myself and doing things that I like and enjoy, because what is the point in punishing ourselves? We already live in a stressful enough society. You don't need to create extra stress for yourself. Truly, real health, real wellness, real vitality, real energy, real fiery metabolism comes from very basic things. You guys, it's not complicated. It feels complicated when you're in the trenches and you're dealing with symptoms and everything feels bad. Yeah, it feels super complicated. I get that. It feels heavy. I get that. But truly, the simple things move the needle more than anything else. Making sure you're getting enough sleep. Oh my God, if you are not getting 8 hours of sleep through winter, you need to be sleeping more. Like, forget everything else. Just focus on how can I get 8 hours of sleep a night. That is your number one priority. 8 hours of sleep, getting daylight in your eyes multiple times throughout the day, especially in winter. Making sure you're eating a good, nourishing breakfast with your protein, your fiber, your carbohydrates, especially if you eat breakfast and then you go and you're moving. Remembering that carbohydrates are energy and energy needs somewhere to go. So make sure that you are eating enough to fuel you up, and that if you're eating a lot, that you're moving your body. And ultimately, like I said, especially in winter, make sure you're front loading your food, because this is going to really help with your sleep and your digestion. So having your biggest meals of the day, breakfast, lunch, maybe an afternoon snack, and a lighter or smaller dinner. You can still have heavy, quote unquote, food for dinner, just have a smaller portion and see how that lands for you. If you're still feeling very hungry right before bed, try a little bedtime snack that's going to help support sleep, like warm milk and honey. And then just go from there. And you guys get your steps, get outside, get moving. These very, very simple things make such a huge and impactful difference. People are always looking for the quick fix or the supplement or, the special diet or whatever. But truly, everything comes down to doing things that you enjoy, receiving pleasure from life and allowing yourself to receive pleasure from life, making sure that you're setting up your reality in a way that cultivates enjoyment and pleasure. Because like I've said multiple times throughout this episode, what is the point if you hate it? All right, I'm going to sign off on that note. I hope you guys have a lovely holiday season. I will check in sometime in December with a new episode. In the meantime, I would love it if you came over and had a chat with me on Instagram. Come follow me, come say hi. My handle is at live, Live, .vita, VYTA. And my inbox is always open. I'm really interested in connecting with you and seeing what you got going on. I would love to hear from you. How has this episode helped you? Let me know. Come say hello. And in the meantime, if you are a listener or you've been following along with me for a while, I would like you to know that I am building a hybrid coaching program that I'm hoping to release early 2026. And I would love your feedback on that. I have linked in the show notes a little Google form that only I have access to. And it's basically a little survey that would really help me out for developing a coaching program that will help you. I want to do this hybrid coaching because I believe it will be more accessible to more people. And from working one on one with people, I have realized that people are feeling like they don't have a lot of time, and we're spending a lot of time working on the basics. So basically, I want to create this hybrid model where you can move at your own pace through the basics while still having accountability from me directly, as well as building in community, because I know a lot of us are really feeling like, where are my people? I know a lot of people who they have the holistic lifestyle, but everyone around them does not. So let's connect. Let me know. Please go fill out that survey if this is something that interests you, because I would love to have your feedback in building my offer. And in the meantime, yeah, just come say hello. Remember to give me a like, a follow, a share, rate this episode, all those fun things. And thank you so much for tuning in. I'll talk to you next time.